So what do a Dutch symphonic prog band, a Canterbury jazz fusion collective, a Canadian arena rock powerhouse, and one of Australia's heaviest early rock groups have in common? Well, they all helped shape the sprawling, unpredictable world of progressive and experimental rock. Some climbed the charts with iconic singles, whilst others became cult favourites, hidden away on rare vinyl shelves, but each left behind a story worth exploring. Let's step into their worlds and rediscover the music that slipped between the cracks of musical history. Gilgamesh start our story today, and were a British jazz rock and Canterbury scene band formed in the early 1970s by keyboardist Alan Gowan. They became known for their intricate, keyboard-driven sound that leaned heavily into fusion, with shifting time signatures and complex harmonies. Gilgamesh often shared members and connections with other Canterbury acts like Hatfield and the North, National Health and Sock Machine, and so on. Now, although they never gained major commercial success, their two albums, Gilgamesh from 1975 and Another Fine Tune You've Gotten Me Into from 1978, are regarded as cult classics. The music was both cerebral and atmospheric, and appealed to progressive rock fans who favoured instrumental experimentation. Gowan's early death in 1981 cut short the band's legacy, sadly, but their influence remains evident among the Canterbury revivalists. Next up, Earth and Fire, and these are a band that I've been asked for so many times. And these were a Dutch progressive rock band formed in 1968 by the brothers Chris and Gerard Koerts. Fronted by vocalist Jurny Kardman, they became one of the Netherlands' most successful rock groups of the 1970s. Their music combined symphonic prog with strong melodic hooks, and this produced a sound that balanced experimentation and accessibility really very nicely indeed. They scored several hit singles in Europe, including Seasons, written by Golden Earring's George Koumans, and Maybe Tomorrow, Maybe Tonight. Their albums, such as Song of the Marching Children from 1971 and Atlantis from 1973, showcased their blend of lush arrangements, conceptual themes, and Kardman's distinctive voice. Now, whilst their popularity waned in the 1980s, like many of these bands did, as they shifted towards pop and disco influences, Earth and Fire remained a celebrated part of Dutch prog history. Next, Manfred Mann's Earth Band. And these were formed in 1971 by South African keyboardist of the same name, after his earlier pop successes in the 1960s. This band blended progressive rock, jazz and pop sensibilities with a strong focus on Mann's signature Moog and keyboard works. They're best known for the hit covers, especially Bruce Springsteen's Blinded by the Light, which became a US #1 in 1971, and For You. But unlike many prog acts, the Earth Band balanced accessibility with experimentation, producing albums such as Solar Fire and The Rolling Silence. Their sound often fused environmental and cosmic themes with driving rock rhythms. The group has enjoyed longevity, touring and recording well into the 2000s. Now, Buffalo were one of the first heavy rock bands to emerge from Australia in the early 1970s. Their sound combined blues-based hard rock with proto-metal heaviness, often drawing comparisons to Black Sabbath and Led Zeppelin. Albums such as the 1972 Dead Forever and Volcanic Rock from 1973 cemented them as cult figures in the development of Australian hard rock. The band's raw, uncompromising energy and controversial album art sometimes drew criticism, but also gave them a rebellious appeal in many ways. But despite the critical acclaim, they struggled commercially, overshadowed by more radio-friendly Australian acts. Today, they are recognised as an early pioneer of heavy rock in Australia. A big favourite of mine next, Humble Pie, and these were a British rock supergroup formed in 1969 by Steve Marriott of Small Faces and Peter Frampton from The Herd. These were known for their blend of hard rock, blues and soul influences, and they became one of the defining live acts of the early 1970s. Their double live album for performance, Rocking the Fillmore from 1971, showcased really their powerful stage presence, and it's still considered a classic. The band helped bridge the gap between blues rock of the 1960s and the harder-edged rock of the 1970s. And after Frampton's departure, the band leaned even more heavily into hard rock and boogie styles. Though they never achieved lasting mainstream success, they remain influential and beloved among classic rock fans. Next, Ethos. These were a progressive rock band from the United States formed in the early 1970s. It best remembered for their 1976 debut, Ardor, which showed an adventurous mix of symphonic rock, complex rhythms and layered harmonies. Unlike many of the British counterparts, Ethos incorporated a distinctly American flair to it, balancing virtuosity with melodic accessibility. The group's music often featured multiple keyboards, giving it a lush, expansive sound. And despite some critical recognition, they struggled to find a wide enough audience and disbanded not long after. Today, they are often rediscovered by collectors and prog enthusiasts seeking obscure 70s gems. East of Eden were a British progressive rock band formed in 1967, known for their eclectic and experimental style. Now, they incorporated elements of jazz, folk and psychedelia, as well as Eastern music, often using unusual instrumentation. Their early albums included Mercador Projected from 1969. This showcased both heavy guitar riffs and this avant-garde improvisation. The band's most famous track, Jigger Jig, became a surprise UK hit in 1971 with its folk dance flair. Now, constant lineup changes, though, affected their stability, but they maintained a reputation for adventurous and boundary-pushing music. Now, whilst not a household name, they remain a respected band in prog and fusion circles. Now, Sada were a Canadian progressive rock band formed in 1977, and these guys were known for their blend of melodic hooks, futuristic themes and technical musicianship. They gained international recognition in the early 1980s with albums like World Apart from 1981, which featured hits such as On the Loose. Saga's music combined elements of prog rock complexity with radio-friendly accessibility, in earning them success in Europe as well as in North America. Now, a defining feature of their work is the chapters. Now, this was a series of songs spread across multiple albums that really told a science fiction story. Their polished sound and use of synthesizers helped them stand out during the rise of arena rock. But despite changing trends, Sada have continued to record and tour, really, for decades. The Dixie Dregs were an American instrumental rock fusion band led by guitarist Steve Morse, founded in the 1970s. Now, their music blended rock, jazz, country, classical, and bluegrass influences into a unique and highly technical style. Known for their virtuosity, the band pushed instrumental rock into new territory, gaining critical acclaim, though only limited mainstream success, sadly. Albums like What If from 1978 and Night of the Living Dregs from 1979, these showcased their eclecticism and precision. Steve Morse later became widely known as a solo artist and also a guitarist for Deep Purple, furthering the band's legacy. Today, though, the Dixie Dregs are celebrated as pioneers of genre-defying fusion, ending with Spirit of Christmas this time, and these were a Canadian progressive rock band active in the 1970s. They were known for their soul full-length album Lies to Live By in 1974, and this blended symphonic prog textures with psychedelic and folk influences. Very nicely done indeed. The record, though obscure, has become really quite a sought-after item among collectors of rare progressive rock. Spirit of Christmas stood out for their layered arrangements and atmospheric, sometimes whimsical, songwriting. But despite their talent, they never achieved this widespread recognition and quietly disbanded. Their legacy lives on, though, through the many prog enthusiasts who continue to rediscover and champion their particular style of music. So from the symphonic sweep of Earth and Fire to the jazz fusion twists of Gilgamesh, and from Humble Pie's fiery live energy to Sarva's polished futurism, each of these bands have carved out their own corners of rock's vast landscape. Some became household names, but others remain treasured secrets amongst collectors and devoted fans. But all have contributed to the rich, ever-expanding story of progressive and experimental music. Now, their legacies remind us that the most exciting discoveries often lie just beyond the mainstream, waiting to be unearthed by curious ears. So whether you're revisiting old favourites or encountering these names for the first time, the journey is part of that reward. Now, the second video I shot in this series really has proved to be extremely popular, and that's the video I want you to watch next. I'll see you over there.